Hey Ria, let's take a look at your week 6 final project here. A much cleaner version of your room than we saw the last time. I think a lot of the kind of excessive use of colored pencil that was populating the last drawing, I think being eliminated here and leaving a much simpler and kind of straightforward drawing overall. I think some improvements have been made. The curtains feel, I think, a lot more consistent than what we were seeing before. I think the coloring tends to be a little bit more consistent as well. I like the green and the yellow combination, and we're seeing it quite a bit repeated in a lot of elements, but doesn't necessarily feel forced in any way. Just kind of works in a more natural sort of flow. The curtains and having a little bit of the wrinkles in the curtains, I think, is helping to give them a bit of form. I think you actually could kind of bring them out even further, and try to give them a little bit more substance, the shadows and the wrinkles a little bit more, so that the curtain has a bit more movement. A lot of the time when we see these curtains, or any curtains really, there's just a lot of flow to them because from top to bottom, they have these folds present. I think that will also help to break up the space a little bit better. Having shadow, lights, and darks and that sort of thing, it'll kind of flow, I think, undulate a little more, which I think is something that will help to break up kind of this space. This is probably my main criticism of the final, is that there is, while you've reduced the kind of clutter of the colored pencil and having all this different kind of motion to the stroke, not having any in place within the ground plane or the ceiling, or even kind of the sidewall, though I do notice a little bit of value. It does feel very empty. It feels, very sparse and starting to border on kind of stark. So having something in place, I think, down here would be helpful. I think that not having anything there, once you see it not there, it just ends up feeling like a lot of negative space that needs a little bit more activity. Definitely not something to this degree where it's just kind of taking up every possible inch. And I think for me the main issue was that it's creating a value system that shouldn't really be there, which made things much more confusing. It interfered with shadows, and I think that colored pencil especially started to create a sense of texture when I don't think texture was necessary. But I think it still shows that having something in place is kind of necessary when you have so much kind of negative space. You have very few elements in place on the ground plane, that seem to be spaced very far apart. And so having something, it could be a rug, it could be a little bit of value that's down here that starts to get lighter and lighter as it gets towards the window, and the same on the ceiling, could help to break up, that space a little bit more. I think you can also push the value range a little bit more in some of these objects. I think this object and this object, I could get just a little bit darker on those areas that are not getting hit with light. I think you're doing a good job with the chair, which is very light in value and also very dark, and has a few in-betweens which are good. And even kind of the ottoman or the step here is also doing that. So I think seeing a little bit more value, a little bit more darker value in here as well, to kind of show that turn a little bit clearer would be, helpful. I think the last thing for me is that there is some good texture going on, but again, I almost wish we could see a little bit more texture. The windows, I think, are very nicely done in creating a very reflective texture. I'm not sure I really noticed much else other than the curtains, which have kind of a texture in place. I think that, again, having the wrinkles in place would actually make that even more effective. But I don't really notice texture in things like the chair, the display stand, or even the vase. So having a little bit of that might actually break up some of the will help to add a little bit more interest overall. It's still well done. Perspective feels solid. I think coverage with the marker when it is in place feels very good, very clean. And again, I think color wise you've done a great job of creating a lot of unity and consistency to the final with